Embraer has received reports of occurrences in which Embraer original jets have temporarily lost pitch trim control shortly after takeoff. Although control of the aircraft was maintained throughout these occurrences and the flights were completed, Embraer has given this matter the highest priority and carried out an extensive investigation to assess the possible causes. Two basic causes have been identified: failure to adjust the stabilizer promptly after takeoff and/or improper use of the double trim switch. Let us begin with a review of trimming mechanisms in Embraer original jet aircraft. An Embraer original jet pilot normally trims the aircraft longitudinally by changing the stabilizer incidence angle relative to the aircraft body. Alternative trimming mechanisms, such as the sole use of elevator trim tabs, are not possible because of the wide range of operational angles of attack and the normal operating envelope of the aircraft. The stabilizer hinge is located close to the point where the resulting lift on the whole horizontal tail is applied in a trimmed condition. If no retrimming is commanded during aircraft acceleration, the pilot will need to move the yoke nose down, and the resulting lift will increase and move forward. Let us also review the pilot aircraft interfaces relating to the pitch trim switches and indications, and the safety features that have been included in the pitch trim system to protect the aircraft from uncommanded pitch trim signals. Each yoke is equipped with double trim switches. Both switches must be pressed at the same time in order to move the stabilizer and change the trim. If only one of the switches is pressed, the trim will not actuate. If the pilot continues to press one switch for more than 7 seconds, both switches will be deactivated and cease to function. An additional safety measure stops the trim operation if the pilot presses both switches at the same time and continues to hold them in the new position for more than 3 seconds. In this case, the stabilizer will stop moving. In other words, the stabilizer is not permitted to move continuously for more than 3 seconds. Both switches must be released and pressed again in order to move the stabilizer further. In the present system configuration, there is no alarm or message that sounds when the pilot incorrectly uses the trim switches or causes the stabilizer to stop moving by holding both switches for longer than 3 seconds. With this background in mind, let us now return to the Embraer investigation, the causes of temporary trim loss, and Embraer's interim recommendations. Embraer's investigation has indicated that if the stabilizer is left in the same position it was in for takeoff, and the pilot continues to fly the aircraft in a mistrimmed condition, the forces on the yoke may increase to the point that they produce a load on the stabilizer actuator that exceeds its stall's threshold, consequently making it unable to respond to the pilot's trim input. In this case, the use of the backup trim is ineffective. These situations can, however, be remedied or avoided altogether. Embraer Operational Bulletin number 145012/00, issued on December 1, 2000, explains in detail the proper procedures for avoiding loss of pitch trim and also how to overcome high pitch control forces that could develop after takeoff because of the failure to adjust trim immediately after takeoff. In the interim period, Embraer is also developing hardware modifications that, once approved, should prevent actuator stall from occurring in the first place. These modifications must first be tested and further refined before they can be certified and incorporated into each aircraft now in service. Embraer will also release an update to the pilot aircraft interface through which the pilot will be advised whenever the trim switch is misused or has become deactivated. Operational Policy Recommendations. The trim must be set for takeoff in accordance with the weight and balance data contained in the operational manuals provided by Embraer. Allowances on top of the calculated trim setting are not recommended. When setting pitch trim for takeoff, the pilot and co-pilot's pitch trim switches and the backup trim should be switched back and forth in both directions for at least 3 seconds. Check for correct trim timer and actuation direction. Retrimming during takeoff roll is not allowed, and when airborne, the trim system is to be used strictly to alleviate forces on the controls. The trim system should never be used as the primary means of controlling aircraft attitude. A typical takeoff requires a definite back pressure on the yoke to rotate the aircraft, but soon after the aircraft is airborne, some nose-down retrimming is needed. Therefore, Embraer recommends that the pilot use nose-down retrimming immediately after the aircraft is airborne, and in any event, before reaching an airspeed of 160 knots. Do not delay. Make this a flight standard point. Any deviation from this procedure should only be made after the associated hardware has been modified in accordance with the Embraer's instructions. If the longitudinal pitch trim system ceases to respond to pilot inputs during climb-out or acceleration and pitch control forces become high, reduce airspeed to alleviate control column forces. If loss of pitch trim is confirmed in both channels, maintain the original takeoff flap setting or extend it to the takeoff setting if already retracted, observing the flap maneuvering speed. Keep the gear down in order to alleviate the pitch trim tendency. Decelerate the aircraft and return to the original takeoff configuration to return the aircraft to a trimmed condition, which will reduce the load on the actuator, allowing the stabilizer trim to operate. Extending speed brakes and subsequently closing them may aggravate the situation because the aircraft is auto-trimmed nose up when the speed brakes are extended. When they are closed, the aircraft is retrimmed nose down, but if the actuator load is close to the stall limit, it may not be capable of retrimming nose down. Accordingly, extension of the speed brakes is not recommended.